Welcome to Hill Hollow. So for this video, we're just going to do a little update on who we are, what we're doing, and how far we've come. So at the end of 2025, we had the opportunity to buy a little over 23 acres in East Tennessee, and the property we bought actually used to be a sawmill. But buying it in the winter was when we finally closed, and we were starting to learn the ins and outs of what will be our new home.
Teddy, up here, Teddy. You don't need to be falling in the ice. My word. Also,
Which included lots of trash and metal. But we have some really beautiful views. There are trails that run all throughout the property that we like to take the dogs on. They love being able to be off leash, being able to smell and just have a little more freedom while we get our exercise in. And that has been one of the biggest joys closing on this property. We're very blessed to have several water features. So we have 2 large ponds and then a couple other that hold water but aren't quite big enough to call ponds.
glorified puddle.
And of course, little surprises.
Oh, this is our other. Oh, no. Snake. I'm not a fan of snakes. He's right
I've seen big snakes, but they're just
there by that
even
tree.
bigger
There
down
he
in
is.
Tennessee.
Anyway, so I'm going to stay over here. This is another glorified puddle. It loops back around that little mound. And I think it's overflow from this, which is a frog. Pond number 3.
But we are excited. We have several ponds. Eventually down the line, we'll clean up, maybe stock one with fish and then use one to swim. For now, they're just beautiful and very peaceful to see and enjoy.
Last item on our tour, this trail, which is starting to grow in, so not too much of a trail.
This property is known for having very unique things, which we knew it would going into buying a property that used to be a sawmill.
Poison ivy as far as the eye can see. But we also have this random piece of farm equipment in the woods. So, you know, that's pretty cool.
Now that we're moving into spring, we have noticed that poison ivy is everywhere. Thankfully, I'm not really allergic to poison ivy. That being said, we do want to get a handle on that. But we also have a ton of wild blackberries, which I'm very, very excited about. One of the first projects we started was the old mill office, which was a trash pit. So I spent only 2.5 hours one day starting to clean this out. We're not sure if it's going to be salvaged. As you can see, it's in pretty rough condition. There's a lot of animal droppings.
My pulse is going crazy. I was moving this couch because it was against this wall, and so I could get everything back there. I turned it this way, and out of the corner of my eye I see something moving, so I naturally freak out. It's a ball. It's like a foam ball. And I lost my mind because all I saw was movement out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, not today. The culprit scared the crap out of me.
We'd have to clean this out anyway, no matter what we do, because there is just a ton of trash, so we don't want getting into the environment. As you can see, there's still a lot to do. So I had 12 to 15 bags I filled with trash. And this whole side isn't super stable. This side's a little sketchy, so I won't even walk on it, or at least haven't. But this used to be the old office. And we also had a bonfire, permit and everything, but there was already this brush pile that was kind of built up in the center of our circle driveway. So one day we got the permit and burned through about half of it. and it was nice. It also burnt down some of the grass in the middle of the driveway, so when we were ready to start our metal collection, it was kind of burnt down a little more at least than it was before. But this was one of our first priorities. This area had a ton of rusty saw blades just everywhere, and once this tall grass grows in, you cannot see this. So this was early this year. I actually can't even remember what month we did it, but being in Tennessee, it's warm enough we were in t-shirts, but it was still pretty early in the year, and we definitely wanted to get these saw blades cleaned up to protect the pepper paws and also just start getting a handle on all the loose metal that's spread throughout the property. So we just picked a day, went out, collected it all. They're pretty easy to bend, so we were able to just kind of bend them or break them into smaller pieces to fit in the tractor bucket and use, I think we did it all in one trip. We were able to clean out this area. But it definitely helped that some of the grass had been burnt down, also that it was before spring, so things hadn't started growing in yet, and it made it much easier to see. But there was even more metal than we had previously thought. It is actually crazy how well it hid in the grass, even with things dead and dying off. So once we started it, we loaded it up, and we also found a free rake. That's been another fun thing about the property, is we're actually finding some useful stuff, and we're trying to keep and repurpose or just use anything we can. So this rake was in pretty good condition, and it got added to our collection. So I just tossed it in the garage for safekeeping. And then we were on to our next task. So for now, we're just dumping everything into one central location. This is up out of the way. The dogs aren't going to come over here. We'll stay away from it. But we're piling all the metal into one spot for now, and then down the line, once we have a big load, we plan to take it to a scrapyard. Anything that we're not going to use. Some of the metal we do have plans for that we can repurpose, but there's just so much of it, a lot of it will get scrapped. And we'll see what we get back. Anything we do make will just be invested back into the property. But speaking of things we find,
onto the trails to pick up more metal. Thank goodness for tractors.
This was a chain Kagan had seen earlier, so that was something we snagged and got put to good use while we pulled out these giant pipes that were over by the office. So these were a couple right next to the office, kind of woven through the trees. This one wasn't so bad. He was able to pull out pretty easily with the chain and then just drag it up top to our pile. And roll it into place. When it came to the big metal pieces, I definitely was emotional support.
Now we're off to get the second one. I definitely have the easier job out of the two here.
This one was a little more complicated. It was partially kind of buried as well as wedged between a few trees. So Kagan attached it to the tractor, then did a little lifting and rearranging to get it loose enough to pull out. And this, I didn't even see. He started working back this way, and I was so confused because I thought we had cleaned everything up already. And I didn't see what he attached it to until he was literally pulling it out of the brush. So this I found out from a previous video where we shared a clip of this, that people were saying it's a blower fan for like all the sawdust, and that's what those pipes connected to as well. That was part of that system. but it was completely overgrown with these like vines that I don't know how he saw it. I never knew it was there until he literally pulled it out. But don't forget that when you work, you can still have fun. I got a little tractor ride. We moved on to the next spot. So this was up the hill. Right off the trail, there's this hill that goes down into kind of a bowl shape. And this area we wanted to tackle because as it was warming up, we didn't want to make a happy home for snakes who would want to sunbathe on all the sheet metal. So there was this door in the woods Kagan grabbed to get rid of. I found an old microwave, which was very heavy. They definitely used to make them heavier than they are now, but surprisingly, the light bulb in the back, which was exposed, was completely unbroken. Which, considering I'm pretty sure it got rolled down a hill, was pretty impressive. But this was the big reason that we came to this spot. This whole area just had this sheet metal that was just thrown down the hill and had collected. It was partially buried, rusting out, falling apart in our hands. So we really wanted to get this cleaned up again so dogs aren't running over rusted metal if they run through the woods. And also because, one, we didn't want the trash there. And once this grew in, it would be near impossible to find. And we were already having issues with the pieces pulling apart as we were trying to pull it out of the ground. So if it was covered with plants and vines, that would have been even more difficult. And thankfully, the sheet metal itself wasn't heavy because my upper body strength is lacking, but it still was quite the cardio workout just for the sake of how many trips up and down the hill it took to clean all of this up. But we had a pretty good system by the end. We just kind of took a big piece, loaded it up on top of each other, and were able to kind of carry the rest of it out that way. So it was like a little metal burrito. And back down the hill for a good day's work. So that day we had just pulled it up next to the path, and then a couple days later we came back to grab it all. So we actually drove the truck up the hill, and we were able to load all the sheet metal just into the bed, which made hauling it down so much easier because this would have taken a lot of trips on the tractor. But from there, we pushed it out and then just pulled the rest of the pieces to add to our pile. It was crazy to see because so much of what we do, we both have full-time jobs. So everything we do is piecemeal. When we have time, we'll do different projects. So having the metal pile has been really interesting because we can actually see all the stuff that we're picking up here and there collect into a pretty substantial pile. So we use some of our tires on top to hold the sheet metal down. Before I started this channel, Kagan pulled out these tires. We're at 57. And that's only about half the property. So we still have half the property to go that we just haven't hooked the chain up and pulled those tires out yet. And of course, we still have the entire mill site. So this is a better look at what used to be where the mill was. As you can see, the building itself is very run down. There's not too much of a structure there anymore. But there's a lot of loose nails and boards with nails, as well as there's still like the conveyor belt and some of those big metal pieces. And this is going to be a big task. So this one I don't see happening too soon. This will probably be a down the road. Right now, we're just trying to get things cleaned up and get the top portion of the garage is what we plan to make a house. So we're trying to get that ready so we can move up here. But until then, I had a ton of fun playing with the levers and, you know, don't do this at home, kids, but I had fun kind of exploring and taking a look at some of the mill infrastructure. I really just like playing with levers. But this will be a big task when the time comes. And this is one of our trails. It's probably in the worst shape, kind of the side that we haven't pulled the tires out of yet. So especially now as it's spring, you can see stuff's already starting to grow around them, hold them in. But this is on the list. We just haven't made it over to this side yet. And that's our trash pile. Every time I walk the dogs, as I see stuff, I'll kind of grab it, add it to the collection. It has to be organized because some of it's recyclable. So I want to go through everything and then we'll take it to the dump. We also have, for lack of a better word, I'll call it our kind of moat. So between this like natural retaining wall and the foundation, there's more saw blades, there's trees they cut down. I think there's a door back there. So that's another project we're going to have to tackle because we also have to put in better drainage.
What you doing?
This was as far as we got so far in terms of tackling the mill area, which was just clearing a path from that debris and, like I said, all those sharp nails that are just sticking up out of the ground. We planted some barrier trees between us and the one neighbor that you can see from the property. And so we wanted to set up a water system that was sustainable but also would help us save money on water costs because we have, I believe, 65 trees we planted, which are going to take quite a bit of water to make sure they're established and set up for success. So since our pond is overflowing, that was the perfect solution to kind of pump the excess water out of there and use those natural nutrients that we already have and allocate those to water our trees rather than flooding the path and environment down by the pond. So Kagan kind of took the lead on setting up this water system where we got a 330-gallon tote that weighs 2,000 pounds when it's completely full. So we got a little cover and everything, and we have this set up at the mill site, which is kind of the halfway point between the trees and the ponds where the water is going to be coming from. So attached to the tote, we have a 2-inch, it's that blue hose that runs through the mill site, which is why we went through, swept it, cleaned away the debris to make a clear path. And the tote on the other side runs down silver hoses to the soaker hoses, which run along our trees. So this way we can fill up that tote and then have the water go down to the soaker hoses and just provide a very nice slow drip watering of our trees to help them stay happy and healthy and hopefully grow nice and big and full, just to give us a little bit more of privacy barrier and also sound barrier from the neighbors and the road down lower on the other side. So this we tackled closer to evening, and you could see as we're laying everything out, we were fighting against the light. So we were trying to get everything set up and done before it got dark. This area right here is absolutely infested with ticks. Every single time we're down by the trees, even if I'm there for a minute checking just to see how they're doing, I find one crawling on me. So this is your reminder, always check for ticks. So while Kagan was finishing setting up some stuff up top, I was taking the lead on laying out the soaker hoses and then just going through and making sure nothing's kinked, that they were laying flat, and there'd be no issues with the water getting through them. On this long side here, we had 200 feet, and then the other side is 100, and they meet kind of at this corner where we have the pressure gauges all set up.
I'm not sure you're going to be able to get me out of that. It'll be too dark. See if this works. Cool.
Everything was all set up, but testing it was for another day. And nothing works exactly as planned. So we found out during our test another morning that our brand new hose came with a pinprick hole. So what better way to fix it than to completely cut it in half, and we ended up splicing it. So a little bit of an inconvenience. Obviously a new hose, you wish it came without holes in it, but it wasn't a huge deal. With a $2 splice, we were able to reattach that, get it hooked back up, and then we were back in business. Take a moment to appreciate how beautiful the pond looked with the reflection off the water. It's so peaceful back here. It's one of my favorite parts of the property. But here is where we have our suction hose in the pond that's overflowing, and we're using a gas pump just to pull that water up from the pond into our tote. And this thing works so well. It is a larger pump, but it fills the tote in about 5 minutes, which is great because Kagan works nights. So he needs to get to sleep, pretty quickly when he gets home. So it's nice that after work he can go in, less than 10 minutes. He can fill up the tote, get it set up to start watering for the day, and still be able to easily go to bed. So just in that trip up, you can see the water's already up to the second silver line. That's how fast this fills. And then we just make sure after we fill the tote to release the water, because we want to release that pressure. Since we have so many and dogs, we don't want them stepping on the hose and causing damage.
Yeah, open it up, plug it in, see if it works.
Nice. So originally our plan was we had this electric pump hooked to the other side of the tote, and we were gonna plug that in and use the electric pump to pump the water downhill to the trees, because while it is downhill, it kind of levels out, and we didn't know if gravity would be enough to push it all the way. So you could see with the pump, the water was beating and it was working beautifully.
So we're doing a little bit of an experiment. Kagan and I tested out the water system this morning, and it did work. Now, it's not super hot out. It was probably mid to upper 50s when we were testing it this morning. And it's going to get a lot hotter than that in the summer. And our electric water pump was already getting quite warm and overheating. And it does have a shutoff, so we don't have to worry about the safety. But that being said, raised some issues on whether or not that would be efficient and withstanding option. So from the tote down to the trees is downhill. So we were trying to see if it could be gravity fed, and this morning it was getting enough pressure down at the hoses from the incline or decline to water them. So I'm about to go down and check the trees and see how wet they are, but first we're gonna check and see. It's been about 6 hours. We're gonna see how much of the tote has been emptied. So it looks like we're down to here, which is down to like here. So we still have, this is halfway, so we still have more than half the tote in 6 hours. So now the question is it just because they're connected to drip hoses, which are designed to release the water really slowly so that it can soak in? Or is it because after the water goes down, there's not enough pressure coming from the tank to push it all the way through the hoses? So, remains to be seen. Come with me to fix a problem. So I took the dogs out to go potty and came to check on our trees. Kagan started the water this morning so that they'd be watered, and I came down and it was bone dry. So I came over here and you can see we're at 0 pressure, which is not good. So there's clearly no water getting down here, but I did check up top and everything was open. Water was getting in that way. So I think this is what we have going on. This would only be the second time watering the trees, and the first time we had our electric pump hooked up to the tote, which was our original plan. Kagan started it all this morning. He filled up the tote perfectly fine, opened everything up, went to bed, and when I checked on it, which it's been at least 5 hours, nothing was getting down there. So I think because it wasn't already primed, there may be air in the hose and it's not enough to be able to push the water through on its own, since it does go downhill fairly significantly, but it kind of flattens out getting it to the hoses. So what I'm gonna try is to take our electric pump, which we just had in the garage, and I'm gonna turn it on just long enough to prime the hose, make sure water is starting to get down to the trees, and then do what we did last time where we just turn it off and let gravity do the rest. So I think we just need to give it a little kickstart and hopefully this works. So let's see.
The first time I tried this fix, I was reattaching the pump back at the tote, which turned out to not be the most efficient.
Field trip to get tools because I can't get this off with my hands.
As you can see here, the absolute hassle I had of trying to get it unhooked.
Can't find any tools. Okay. Put it back. Putting it back where I found it.
The absolute chaos of this video, because none of this was planned. I ended up spending a hot minute out here getting all this sorted to make sure that our trees would have water.
After that hassle and a half, that took so much longer to swap back and forth than I thought. So hopefully that's not an issue. Oh, I'm back. That did not work. So I got back down and we were back at 0 for pressure. RIP. I don't know if I took too long, but plan number 2, I moved the electric pump down here. So we have the hill there. Water was getting to this point, so I think we had enough force to get it down here. So I think we just need the boost to get it there. It made me nervous putting it on the grass because it was getting pretty warm. It has an emergency shut off when it overheats, but just in case, I brought a cement block over. It'll have, I guess we'll see. I might have to put it on the ground because I don't know if the water will get up this. So stay tuned for that. But now we're gonna see if using this to pump it the rest of the way And then this will be much easier. I can just unplug it here and the water can still work its way through. This will be much faster to do.
There are a couple other tweaks we're considering for the water system, but for the most part, it's set up and running, and our trees are very happy. This is another task on our to-do. We have a concrete graveyard. There are so many piles of these large concrete broken up slabs. And so we actually have it's not really a construction company. They do like gravel and excavation and things like that lives down the road. And they're going to come chop it up for us and then bring it back so we can use it on the driveway. We've been back and forth with calls for a few months now. So that is on the docket, but has yet to happen. So until then, we just have a bunch of concrete to play on. But we did end up turning on our electricity in the garage, which has just been really useful and nice to have.
We have lights!
The light bulbs are not the best,
Yay!
So we will probably swap those out for something a little brighter, but we also need a ladder tall enough to get up to the light bulbs in the garage because it is a very tall garage. Right now, our trees have been getting the majority of our time, care, and attention. We got the water system all set up. We, of course, had planted them earlier, and we stuck some fertilizer sticks at the base of each tree. And so the next big task we had was to mulch them. So we went, and there was a sale going on at Lowe's, 5 bags for $10. So we went and got a whole bunch of bags. I think we bought 55. And so the day we picked them up, we just kind of laid them at the trees and then came back the next day to go and spread them out. This gave us a chance. Kagan weed whacked around and we cleaned up around the base of the trees just to get rid of any weeds and growth before spreading out the mulch. And he started it, and then when he went to bed, I went back out and finished the rest of the trees that we had to do. So each of them got a really nice layer of brown mulch, and this will help to smother out any of the weeds from growing back, and also just help hopefully just make them happy and thrive and grow. These are green giant barrier trees, which are supposed to grow really quickly. The first year they kind of have to get established, but once they're established, they can grow 3 to 5 feet per year. So we're hoping that by the time we're ready to move up top and we have the necessary first version of our house done, because we'll be working on it for quite a while, but to get it livable, we're hoping by the time that we're up there in a year or two, we will have a decent privacy barrier built in, and it'll just keep growing fuller and taller from there. So once we laid out the mulch, then I just went back through and re-laid out our hoses right next to the base of all the trees, making sure there were no kinks or twists so that they would be ready to go. And then I, of course, picked up all our trash. But that's pretty much all we've done so far. We set up some trail cams in the woods and have been enjoying seeing the little wildlife highway we have going on our back trails. We do plan to hunt on the property, so it's nice seeing the turkeys and deer. And our boys just love the wide open spaces. So we're excited for what's to come. We do have big plans, and it's all a process. So it's important to remember how far we've come and just stay motivated for the projects still to come. But thanks for coming along for the ride. I hope you enjoyed it. That's just a little recap of what we've done so far, and make sure to subscribe and stay tuned to see where we go from here.